Good afternoon, everyone. So, yeah, I'm glad that we are all awake after that beautiful lunch we had. And Asa, thank you for bringing us together. And you, we really appreciate you bringing us together, giving us the platform to present our findings. So I am Iyabo Olanrele, not Olanrele. Thank you. I know you really tried. So I'll be presenting on gendered financial inclusion through fintech services for economic transformation, the case of Nigeria and Ghana. And this report was actually written or produced by 4 authors, Professor Godwin Akpokpoje, Professor Dr. Shegun Awode, and Professor Aluku, and my humble self here. So a brief background into the outline of the presentation. This is the outline of my presentation, and as a way of background, technology adoption in financial services has been actually identified as a key channel for reducing barriers to financial inclusion and possibly a pathway for fostering economic transformation. An estimate actually has put it that digital financing may lead to about 2.1 trillion US in credit access for individual and small businesses, and it could actually lead to 6% GDP growth by 2025 for emerging economies, including Africa. And as a way, fintech will actually be leveraged to improve financial inclusion for women in Africa. And this could actually lead to overall economic transformation through entrepreneurship potentials, among others. And elsewhere, digital platforms actually have been leveraged to provide access for those that are actually excluded from the formal traditional banking system. And this particularly is applicable to women and has helped in fostering their entrepreneurship capacity. So what then is the challenge in Africa? While growth in financial inclusion has actually increased over time between 2011 and 2021 from to about 139%, higher than the global average, there are still concerns around gender gap in account ownership. In 2011, the gender gap in account ownership was about 5%. This increased to about 12% in sub-Saharan Africa compared to other regions that have actually been closing the gender gap in financial inclusion. And in terms of fintech adoption also, we've seen a little bit of improvement between 2014 and 2021, but this improvement is a bit negligible. The cumulative impact is about 0.02% between 2014 and 2021. So these are some of the challenges. Nevertheless, fintech will actually the cumulative impact of fintech will actually benefit women in entrepreneurship activities, and it could actually drive product diversification and enhance economic growth. And it's been found that at the individual level, entrepreneurship benefits individuals to improve their livelihood capabilities and by reducing deprivation, and also for the economy, it could actually lead to economic transformation through product diversification and export competitiveness, as the case may be. But the challenge remains that the benefits of fintech service diffusion may be limited if structural conditions that actually limit women from adopting these technologies for productive uses persist in the economy. And it's been shown in Africa that women adoption of financial technologies like fintech actually is low due to income, education, labor market participation, among others. So this actually informed the broad objective of this analysis. So in specific terms, we assess the drivers of gender gap in fintech adoption. We examine the effect of gender gap in fintech adoption on entrepreneurship. We also investigate the gendered power structure that affect women's fintech adoption, and we analyze the challenges, risks, and governance structure of fintech and identify the opportunities for policy reforms. So why do we carry out this study? The main reason we have similar studies, also similar literary studies that have actually assessed the similar thing we did in our own study. But our major line of departure is the fact that we're able also to assess the role of gender power dynamics in influencing women economic decision, which is mostly absent in other studies, beyond just looking at the socio-economic factors. And we also apply a mixed method approach beyond just using secondary data that may be laced with some bias. We went ahead to also get some information from stakeholder analysis related to the subject matter. So why do we narrow it down to Nigeria and Ghana? we found that the gender parity index in terms of fintech service adoption in Nigeria is low, while Ghana has about 0.8% higher than Nigeria. So this makes these two countries actually context uniquely suited for our analysis. And so for situation analysis, where we are in terms of the depth dimension of what we did, our study actually resonates with the technology upgrading of the depth dimension. That is the T in that framework that is provided by ASET. And we found that Nigeria, in terms of technology upgrading, that is applying technology to productive uses, productive economic activities, is actually doing well. But overall, the cumulative effects in terms of growth terms between 2000 and 2020, the technology upgrading in Nigeria is actually slowing down compared to Ghana, even though Ghana has a lesser level of technology upgrading compared to Nigeria, but Ghana seems to be improving over time. And for the gender inequality rate, we found that Nigeria has a higher gender inequality rate compared to Ghana, but generally the two countries actually in terms of gender inequality rate, over time, there seems to be some kind of decline. So also, what are some of the possible drivers that are driving this gender inequality? In Nigeria, we found out that socio-economic factors like labor market participation, women education, and women account ownership, that's the parity in that level of indicator, will actually be contributing to the increasing gender inequality rate in Nigeria. And this could serve as barriers that may limit women inclusion in economic activities, as the case may be. Oh, sorry. So also in Ghana, however, we found that mobile account ownership, education, and labor market participation may likely be associated with lowering the gender inequality rates in Ghana. So, and we also realized that the legal environment also in Ghana seems to be less discriminatory compared to Nigeria in facilitating women participation in economic activities. So I wouldn't want to bore us with the literature. These are some of the theoretical perspective into our study and the empirical perspective. So in terms of conceptual framework, that is conceptualizing our analysis, we actually link some intervening factors which are within the domain of structural conditions that could actually inhibit or actually foster gender inequality in fintech service adoption, such as mobile financial services, internet financial services, and digital financial services. And the possibility is that if there is lower gender gap in women fintech adoption across these services that we listed, there is high possibility that women entrepreneurship may actually increase in terms of startup businesses or women that aims to expand their businesses. And beyond individual benefits, also the economy stands to benefit in terms of enhancing product diversification, economic competition, and overall economic transformation. So we hint our research hypothesis along 6 premises. The first is that reducing gender gap in education will enhance female fintech adoption in entrepreneurship. And then also we hypothesize that reducing gender gap in income will enhance female fintech adoption and entrepreneurship. Reducing gender gap in labor market, labor force participation will enhance female fintech adoption and entrepreneurship. And reducing gender gap in credit access will enhance female fintech adoption and entrepreneurship, and improving gender power structure will enhance female fintech adoption and entrepreneurship. And lastly, we hypothesize that a reduced gender gap in fintech adoption will increase female entrepreneurship. These are some of the hypotheses we tested in our study. So for our methodology, we use a combination of mixed method approach, like I earlier mentioned, based on quantitative information that are available in the database of the World Bank. And then also we leverage on a stakeholder analysis based on information we collected from fintech and service users, from focus group discussions and in-depth interviews that we conducted in Nigeria and in Ghana. And also we had some consultation also within the fintech ecosystem, and also the Ministry of Women Affairs in Nigeria. We try actually penetrating the Ministry of Women Affairs in Ghana, but for some reasons we couldn't get through to them. And also the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Central Bank of Ghana, we couldn't actually get through to them to get their perspectives on our subject matter. So what are the drivers of gender gap in fintech adoption? What we found is that increase in women income in Nigeria and Ghana could actually lead to reducing, fostering women adoption of fintech, and also increase in women education in both countries also may likely lead to increasing women adoption of fintech services. But in Ghana, we found that increase in women labor force participation may lead to reducing the gender gap in fintech adoption, but not in Nigeria. So what then are the effects of fintech adoption on entrepreneurship? Our major variable of interest, which is women fintech adoption, the gender gap in women fintech adoption, we realize that increase in women fintech adoption, that is, by the way, closing the gender gap in fintech adoption, may lead to women entrepreneurship, both in Nigeria and Ghana. So there was also a feedback effect this basically on the technicality. And in summary, the summary of our findings, we found that education and income may enhance closing the gender gap in fintech adoption in Nigeria and Ghana. Labor force participation also has a higher likelihood of improving gender equality in fintech adoption in Ghana, but not in Nigeria. And then reduce gender gap in fintech adoption in Nigeria and Ghana has associated with higher likelihood of women entrepreneurship, although the effect seems to be more higher in Nigeria than in Ghana. And the key message is that in designing intervention, country-specific dynamics should be considered in order to arrive at effective strategies that may actually promote entrepreneurship through women fintech adoption. And also, for our qualitative analysis, we found that men perceive it more appropriate to control women economic activities. And we outlined these economic activities along 3 thematic areas. That is women control of mobile accounts, and then women ownership of their own businesses, and also women control of other economic assets. So, and also at the board level, that's at the managerial level of the fintech ecosystem, we realized that men hold board and managerial positions more than women in the 2 countries, implying that the gender power dynamics is still strong in Nigeria and Ghana. Although secondary data shows us that the gender power dynamic seems to be decelerating in both countries, but based on the field survey that we did, we realized that this is still a major factor that will actually restrict women adoption of fintech services and overall then engaging in economic activities. And at the regulatory level, we found out that in Nigeria, there is absence of a unified framework that will actually weaken the operational and possibly impede the growth of fintech sector in driving financial inclusion. This is something that is key in Nigeria. And also in Ghana and Nigeria, we found that there is prevalence of data security breaches in the fintech ecosystem, which is a major concern among the end users. And so in terms of policy implication, our study recommends the need to mainstream gender strategies by strategically embedding gender lens in every aspect of national development, including education, labor market programs, and entrepreneurship development, among others. And also there is need to create awareness through behavioral changes to actually incentivize women to engage in economic empowerment activities. And this is actually required to dampen the restriction of women in fintech adoption for their improved livelihoods strategies and overall economic transformation. And also in Nigeria, there is need to have a unified regulatory framework. This could actually help to eliminate all sort of regulatory ambiguity that is prevalent in the fintech ecosystem. And also regulators in the 2 countries need to design and enforce stringent cybersecurity regulation to actually boost end users' confidence, specifically for women. We know naturally women tends to be conservative when it comes to technology adoption. So governments in these 2 countries, especially the regulators, need to design stringent framework to actually cope the issue of cyber insecurity in the 2 countries for more diffusion of fintech services and then the adoption as the case may be. And also bridging the infrastructure gap in internet penetration and electricity is also key in these 2 countries to actually lead to seamless and increased fintech diffusion. And by implication, why these policy implications actually resonate with within the context of these 2 countries. Other African countries sharing similar peculiarities as Nigeria and Ghana may actually leverage from these lessons. So thank you.